Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Engineers and Commanding General, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, I'd like to welcome you to today's change of responsibility between Command Sergeant Major Bradley J. Houston, the 13th Command Sergeant Major, and the 14th Command Sergeant Major, Command Sergeant Major Patrickson Toussaint. At this time, we ask that you please stand for the playing of the national anthem and remain standing for the invocation offered by Chaplain Brad Bauman.
Please join me as we pray. Heavenly Father, we pause to invoke your blessing on this important ceremony and thank you for the gift of leadership. For Command Sergeant Major Bradley Houston, we give you thanks. We're grateful for his challenging leadership, professionalism, and dedication to our Army, Corps of Engineers, and this great nation over the past 31 years. We thank you for his committed concern, authentic caring, and wise counsel for those under his leadership and influence. We will miss his presence here. Now, as Command Sergeant Major Houston and Kim transition into future opportunities and new responsibilities, we ask that you would continue to provide them with your grace, wisdom, and strength in all they do. We pray also for Vince as he continues to pursue his educational goals. We ask that you would also bless and guide his steps. We ask that you would also grant our 14th Command Sergeant Major, Command Sergeant Major Patrickson Toussaint, the continued gifts of wisdom, courage, and strength in all that he does. May his past leadership skills, wisdom, and experience serve as a catalyst for even greater levels of excellence throughout our beloved and storied Corps. Finally, provide Tanya and all Command Sergeant Major Toussaint's immediate and extended family joining him today with your continued blessings. As they transition into this new opportunity of service, provide them also with your strength, grace, and wisdom during these complex times. We thank you for bringing us the Toussaints, and we are excited about the new and unique blessings they will bring us. I ask all these things in your precious and holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. We're here today to witness the official change of responsibility between two distinguished leaders. Our distinguished guests joining us in the auditorium today are Command Sergeant Major Houston's wife, Kim Houston, and their son, Vince Houston. Command Sergeant Major Toussaint's wife, Miss Tanya Toussaint, and their granddaughter, Amaya, his cousin, Chief Warrant Officer 3, Weaver Prosper, and his nieces, Kadisha Miller and Tabian Welch. Command Sergeant Major Toussaint also has his mother, Evelyn, and daughter, Shayana, joining him virtually. In the auditorium, we have Ms. Connie Semonite, spouse of Lieutenant General Semonite, Major General Scott Spellman, Deputy Commanding General for Civil and Emergency Operations, Command Sergeant Major retired Carl Groninger, the 11th Command Sergeant Major, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and to the many leaders, special friends, and co-workers who are too numerous to mention that are joining us virtually. Thank you for joining us today. As we navigate these challenging times with COVID-19, this ceremony has been modified to include social distancing. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, a bouquet of red roses is being presented to Mrs. Houston. Red is the color of the heart and reflects the loving concern that Ms. Houston has shown to our soldiers, civilians, and their families. Ms. Houston's roses are in full bloom, symbolizing the beauty and fulfillment of her time with us in the Corps of Engineers. Mrs. Toussaint is being presented a bouquet of yellow rose buds. Yellow is the color of new beginnings and symbolizes Ms. Toussaint's arrival to the Corps of Engineers. In time, the rosebuds will bloom, and Ms. Toussaint's relationships with the soldiers, civilians, and the families of the Corps of Engineers. Command Sergeant Major Toussaint will also provide a yellow rose to his granddaughter, Amaya. There is no higher enlisted grade or rank except Sergeant Major of the Army, and there's no greater honor. The Command Sergeant Major advises the commander, carries out unit policies, and enforces the highest standards of performance, training, appearance, and conduct of the unit. The Command Sergeant Major is a seasoned veteran whose experience and counsel are sought by subordinate commanders. And like the old sage of times past, the Command Sergeant Major's counsel is expected to be calm, settled, and unequivocally accurate, but with an energy and enthusiasm that never wanes, even in the worst of times. At this time, Command Sergeant Major Houston will extend the unbroken chain of non-commissioned officer leadership of the Corps of Engineers to Command Sergeant Major Toussaint by transferring his authority to Lieutenant General Semonite, who will in turn entrust it to Command Sergeant Major Toussaint. Passing of the Corps' flag. Command Sergeant Major Houston will now place the organizational colors in the first empty stand in front of the flag line, representing the transfer of authority to Lieutenant General Semonite. Lieutenant General Semonite will now place the organizational colors in the second empty flag stand in front of the flag line, representing the reception of and transfer of authority to Sergeant Major Toussaint. Command Sergeant Major Toussaint will now place the organizational colors back into the original flag line stand, representing the acceptance of authority entrusted by Lieutenant General Semonite. Ladies and gentlemen, the 54th Chief of Engineers, Lieutenant General Todd T. Semonite.
Well, thanks, Pete, and to everybody who's here today, I really want to welcome you to a very, very important event, without a doubt. And for those that are watching, we've got an awful lot of people out that are watching this virtually. I do want you to know that we went to great extremes to try to keep the tradition and all of the importance of this particular event, but also do it in a COVID compliant environment. So you can't see, but right now we've got everybody about 6 feet apart, and in this auditorium, the most amount of people we could fit in still can't stay in compliance. And then some of the things we did normally, where we would normally hand the flag back and forth, again, we had to modify that. But Sergeant Major, both the Sergeant Majors, I hope that this is as close as we can come. And I want to apologize, really, on behalf of the federal government that we had to go to these extremes. But as we have always said, and it's right in line with what a command sergeant major would want, the most important thing we have to do every day is protect our people, take care of our people. And so I think this is a pretty good balance of trying to figure out how to do the event with as much dignity as we can, but at the same time, continue to protect everybody. And the other thing that's kind of missing here, normally on these great big events, I mean, it's a lot of fun, and we have a lot of people ahead of time. There's normally a big dinner or something saying farewell and a big reception afterward. And this room would be packed, 300 or 400 people. And the receiving lines, everybody would come up. Vince, it'd be amazing. There'd be everybody standing there. They'd be shaking your mom and dad's hand, and they'd be talking. And two saints, they'd be welcome in another room. And what happens normally is it's just a big bond. And we talk about family in the Army an awful lot. It's the ability to everybody to say thanks to the Houstons and welcome the new ones in. They aren't going to be able to experience that today. So what I would ask all of you that are watching to do, either jump online or with whatever the virtual platform we're using here, or write a note, or somewhere in the next couple of days, just say, hey, my wife and I or my kids were watching the event, and there's a lot of Fort Leonard Wood people watching right now, a lot of great friends of the Houstons and the two Saints. Let them know that you appreciate their service. Let them know you're excited for both of them, and let them know that it really is a very, very honorable occasion, and you are a part of it. So I also want to thank everybody to set this up. We've had a lot of people working very, very hard to be able to figure out how to put it on, do this thing right. It has been a busy week. It's been a great career for the Houstons, but we wanted to send you out the best way we possibly could. And you know very well, because you helped design how we did some of this COVID work. But to the team that put it on, the IT crew, all the rest of the guys that are doing all the hard work, amazing job. So let's give everybody that helped out a big round of applause. So I want to talk a little bit about the families here, and I am very, very sincere when I say that we're an Army family. We always we worry about our soldiers wherever they're at, but we worry about our spouses, we worry about our kids. And here in the Corps of Engineers, we want to continue to be able to be a Corps of Engineer family. We've got 36,000 great teammates. The vast majority, 99% of those, are civilians, all watching, because we've done a massive amount of telework in the last 3 or 4 months. But I do want to make sure that you understand the families that are with these great command sergeant majors. So Kim has been married to Sergeant Major for 30 years. They were high school sweethearts. They met in juniors in high school, and I think 18 different moves, 5 deployments, okay, where Sergeant Major has gone different places. And she has stood by his side the whole time. We're going to obviously do a retirement ceremony this afternoon, so I'm going to defer my longer comments about Kim to the afternoon. But Kim, it has been, you have done everything that one could ever ask for any type of a career soldier. And this is where Sergeant Major told me about these last night. We were talking for about an hour. So every single time, where there was a time when he was a squad leader, you were taking care of the squad. When he was a platoon sergeant, you were taking care of the platoon. And Sergeant Major said, boy, we'd have some event, whether it be Valentine's Day or we'd be something for Thanksgiving, and Kim would pack everything in the car and say, we're going to go over to the office. And so Sergeant Major would bring all these big baskets and stuff for the troops. But Kim was always there trying to take care of the soldiers, the families, a lot of work with family readiness to try to take care of the families. And as Connie's always says, that doesn't mean you do it for the people that are there. It means you help teach them how to be resilient. And I think that there are spouses today, Kim, that are watching here that have always, kind of appreciated the tone that you have set. How do you get to be a professional, command sergeant major's spouse and stand side by side him the whole time? And you have done it with honor. You've done it with dignity. And if there was ever a model of how to do it right, I think Kim Houston is the model. Let's give Kim a big round of applause, okay? I want to talk about Vince as well. Vince is 22. He was a psychology student. He's a rising senior. Vince, I don't know, but my speech always says the Ohio State University instead of Ohio State. So I'm not from Ohio State. I know Sergeant Major's a big fan, but this is like service, and service runs in the Houston family. But Vince wants to go on to be able to work for the Public Health Service, and Tom Janesko is probably one of the big guys that's responsible for that. But I think that's really great, Vince. Is not only have you done and stood by your parents the whole time, and again, we're going to talk a little bit more about you this afternoon as well. But if there was ever a time, Vince, and this goes to the Toussaint kids as well, where any of you walked up and told your dad, or even for the ladies that are here, and said, I'm tired of these moves. 18 moves is too much. And there's a time, Vince, where you were probably the greatest freshman, basketball player. And then all of a sudden you had to move. And then you go to the next school and like, who's this guy, Houston? Does he know how to play basketball? You have to fight your reputation back every single time. It's not like being 12 years in the same high school. And being a military kid is awful hard. And the fact that you stood by your dad, and the fact that you and your mom have stood by them and allowed him to do what he needs to do. He can deploy like he did 5 times, and he knows that he can do that and worry about his soldiers and the mission and not necessarily have to worry about home, because you guys have got the resiliency and the passion to be able to take care of everybody. So let's give Vince a big round of applause, okay? So the role of the Sergeant Major, and we did a little bit of research on this, and Sergeant Major, I don't know if you know, but in the NCO Journal back in Army University Press, it actually lines out 6 or 7 different things. It talks about the Command Sergeant Major. And for those that might not be informed that are sitting here watching, or some of the family maybe that's at home, we take our Command Sergeant Majors and their responsibilities to the utmost importance. And so they are really the one that helps set the tone for the organization. We have to lean on their experience. They're the most experienced non-commissioned officer or enlisted person in that particular formation. And they have to be able to help us understand how we can do our jobs better. We use the term see the organization. I actually just had a session with both Command Sergeant Major Toussaint and Command Sergeant Major Houston right before we come up here. And the ability to kind of be the eyes and ears, get out, see what's going on down on the ground. Leaders make hard decisions a lot of times. Sometimes those decisions, you have to figure out how to have resource constraints or tough calls. And the question is, who's the advisor to the commander making that happen? Who's the one saying, here's the ramifications? How do we continue to make sure that we're balanced and all that? And to be able to advise the commander on all things that happen. Now, I was talking to the Sergeant Major this morning. Here's what's really, really hard. So, Vince, if you were, a private in the organization, you came up through when Private Houston was out there, and then you get to be, Specialist Houston and Sergeant Houston and First Sergeant Houston and Command Sergeant Major Houston of the 15th Engineer Battalion, you know all about running battalions. And when both of these guys got to be brigade sergeant majors, the 2nd Brigade, the 130th Brigade, you knew everything about taking care of soldiers, okay? And this, you did a phenomenal job as a brigade sergeant major. But then all of you, sudden you come to an organization that's 99% civilian. And we don't necessarily put all of our civilians out on the battlefield. We don't have a lot of equipment, but all of a sudden we're out doing a lot of construction work. So how do you fit in? And that's what you two have, I think, done very, very well. Sergeant Major, for your last 3 years, have been able to sit here and start. We've seen this with Sergeant Major Toussaint in his last job in Pacific Ocean Division. But the ability to be able to assess what's going on, to be able to advise on morale. Ms. Payne's here, and we talk about HR. Right now in the Corps of Engineers, we're doing $68 billion. I don't tell you that to brag on the Corps of Engineers. About 3 years, we were doing $26 billion. Today, we're doing $68 billion. And I say every single day, I say, we've got to be able to build with concrete and steel. But the most important thing the Corps of Engineers has to do is build relationships and partnerships and human capital. We use the term in the Corps of Engineers an awful lot about being world class. We want people to be world class. And if you have world class employees, you will end up with a world class leader. And so what the Sergeant Major's job is to continue to look at our people all the way from the SCSs, the general officers, the colonels, down to even to a degree, brand new employees that just come walking in. 22-year-old college kid that joins us, or somebody down out on a lock and dam or out working on the river on the levees. They've got to be able to see what's happening out there and to be able to advise us. So it's a very, very close relationship, and something that we cherish very, very closely as commanders out here. So this is a very, very important day to recognize the significance of the role of the Command Sergeant Major. Even here in USACE, I lean on the Sergeant Major to help me do the regiment as well. I'm the CG of the Corps of Engineers here and all the things that have to happen in the Corps. But on the other hand, we have 90,000 soldiers that somebody leans on us. And while we have great leadership at Fort Leonard Wood in the commandant and the command sergeant major of the regiment, the sergeant major, the chief sergeant major, is also making sure that those 90,000 soldiers have the equipment they need, they have the force structure they need, and they advise. So the sergeant major, a lot of times, while I'm out looking at a project site at Fort Hood, the sergeant major might be down talking to a battalion or brigade to see what we can do. At the same time, he has to build those relationships with those senior leaders. We have theater engineer commands. We have 17 different brigades. We have over 50 different BEBs that are out there. The ability to be able to bring them together and to build those relationships. So it is a very, very important job. You talk about the change of responsibility today, okay? There's a couple things you saw here. You saw the formal transfer of that flag. And while we didn't actually do it the normal way where we would look each other in the eye and go from person to person and transfer, the flag that is transferred really represents the Corps. It represents all 36,000 of those people. And Sergeant Major Toussaint, when you grab that flag today and you put it back in that stand, it's a pretty heavy burden because with you comes the standard setter. That's what we expect of our command sergeant majors, to be able to make sure that people are treated with dignity and respect, that everybody has an opportunity to meet their destiny wherever they want to go, regardless of their rank or their background. Everybody should be able to rise to the highest levels, and then to be able to protect the force, make sure they're safe, to be able to make sure we're accomplishing the mission. And Sergeant Major Houston has done that valiantly throughout his entire last 3 years and throughout his career. And we know that you're going to come in here with all the skill sets to keep that going. But that's what that flag represents. We say the commander is accountable for everything that the unit does or fails to do. As a command sergeant major, you're right by our side, making sure that we do the same thing. And then the other thing about today, we say it's a bittersweet day because everybody that's watching, whether you're a soldier out in the battlefield, whether you're somebody at Fort Leonard Wood, whether you're one of our great civilians that are teleworking, today also signifies kind of this transfer of allegiance, okay? You knew the Houstons. You knew you could walk in and talk to Sergeant Major. You know, he'd walk down and he'd talk to cubicles and you got to know him and you kind of understood what he was like. And all of a sudden, what we're asking you to do is now transfer that loyalty from Sergeant Major Houston to Command Sergeant Major Toussaint. And Sergeant Major Toussaint is going to do the same exact thing. I was talking to him the other day and I said, what do you know, where do you see yourself fitting in here? And he said, I like just talking to people. He said, once I went down and talked to a lady, he was at a division level, okay? So the people from POD know who I'm talking about. And he went down to one of his districts. And the lady said, I think you're here kind of inspecting me. She didn't want to open up. She didn't want to talk. And it took a half an hour for the sergeant major to finally say, no, I just kind of want to know what's going on, what's happening. And the lady finally said, well, hey, if you're here asking me for things, I need some help here and some help there in some areas where he could help out. And sergeant major, that's what they do. They're able to listen to people, talk to people. But now that loyalty transfers, and he's going to be out walking cubicles and walking the edges of the levee and going down through, boat yards to be able to talk to our team to be able to figure out what we can do better. The other thing, too, as much as Command Sergeant Houston did phenomenal things, Sergeant Major Toussaint brings in a different viewpoint, different experiences, new zeal, more momentum, continues to be able to keep all the great initiatives that Command Sergeant Muser started. Now we're going to be able to see that happening as we continue to see that. Two phenomenal leaders, Houston, Toussaint, who really are guardians of the regiment. People that stand for the right thing. They're strategic leaders. Not only do they help train, soldiers and our civilians, but I'm telling you, we have SESs out here who have learned from Command Sergeant Majors, and we have colonels and general officers who learn every single day from the actions, the advice, and the mentorship of a Command Sergeant Major. So Sergeant Major Houston, you've done a phenomenal job, okay? 3 years here, and it goes back, Vincent, a little bit of this is like my command philosophy, and those that might not know, I just kind of want to real quick give you an overview because Sergeant Major Houston has been a critical part of that. I say every day the most important thing we have to do is we have to deliver the program. We have to build buildings. So we have a graphic. It's an engineer castle. It's like the castles you see on the program. And that castle, if you were to build a castle in Germany, just think of how heavy a big castle is. It's very heavy. You can't put it on just a regular old field. You need a massive foundation to be able to build a castle. So I say that while we have to deliver the program, i.e. build the castle, we also have to be able to make sure we strengthen our foundation. Now, it wasn't a lot of concrete several hundred years ago. It was blocks that made the foundation. Building blocks of people that had different skill sets that come together. And Sergeant Major Houston is kind of the mortar that ties all those blocks together. There's a cornerstone. I mean, all of it has to work together. And you think about, what do I expect and what did I get from Command Sergeant Major Houston? Probably most importantly is values and ethics. Make sure that the Corps of Engineers and the Engineer Regiment is professional. Every single thing we do, every single day, regardless of what we're building, we have to continue to be able to treat people with dignity and respect. We've got to be able to develop the workforce. That's what Sergeant Major Houston and the rest of our great HR team do, is make sure that we get better every day. Credentials. How do we continue to have all the skill sets we need? And then things like taking care of people. Sergeant Major Houston was phenomenal when it came to our workforce and our workplace. We have a thing called a big survey we do every year, Federal Employment Viewpoint Survey. We go and we query all of the 36,000 people and we say, what can we do better? And then Sergeant Major and I look at the results. We have 80 different elements that fill out that survey. And we say, hey, these 75 did really, really well. Go down there and pat them on the back. And then Sergeant Major and I pulled in the office about a year ago and said, these 5, they got a little bit more work to do. And we said, hey, let's go down and figure out how we can do a better job. But that's what a Command Sergeant Major brings to the fight. And then this ability to be my advisor, somebody who I can actually lean to on how's the foundation. Because if there's a crack in that foundation, that crack's going to go right up through the middle of that castle as well. And if you don't have a strong foundation, if we don't have the senior NCO and the senior leaders continue to do the right thing, then we're not going to get to where we need to do. So when he first came in, I think I kind of screwed this up, because at one point I probably should have sat down and had like a list of 10 things. And Sergeant Major, you remember this very well. You came in, I said, hey, Sergeant Major. I think he said, like, so what do you want me to do? And I said, well, I'm not really sure. You're a really high-speed Command Sergeant Major, and I hear you can do phenomenal stuff. And I had not worked really, really closely with him. I met him in Afghanistan for 3 or 4 hours. And there's a guy watching TV today, Jim Rowan out there. Most of you know him. I've known Jim for since 1975. And every now and then I call Jim and I say, hey, so what about this? What about that? What should we do with the ACE? What should we do with all this stuff? And at some point, we needed a new Command Sergeant Major. And I said, hey, we're going to have a board. What do you think about this guy, Houston? And Jim Rowan said, hey, there's absolutely no doubt. This is the standard setter. This is the best this is the best they come. And so Sergeant Major came in, and even here in USACE, he continued to worry about development. He helped develop a lot of our contracting team. We have a lot of NCOs in contracting. He helped us actually write the officer development portfolio. So when we have new lieutenants and captains come in, he said we're able to train them. So someday they'll be colonels and they'll be generals. And he did an awful lot of jobs with career skills. How do we able to build credentials back into our workforce? And even those that were retiring, how can we somehow maybe bring them into the Corps and help them transition back in? We have 3 outstanding Command Sergeant Majors. We also want to bring more NCOs into the Corps. He helped draft legislation that is trying to tell Congress to be able to help us bring more NCOs back into the Corps, so that we have the same type of depth and experience that we have in the regiment here in the Corps of Engineers. Very, very active with the workforce. And then I think the biggest thing is that Sergeant Major, when the regular going, if you building a barracks at Fort Bragg, I'm not sure we need a lot of help from the Command Sergeant Major. But when America throws us something unusual, and a disaster is probably the best example, this organization rallies and they stand up. And you and I, in the last 3 years, we've seen Florence, Matthew, we've seen Irma, we've seen Maria, we've seen wildfires, we've seen mudslides, we've seen all those different things. And you've been on the ground. You've been talking to the guys with the red shirts and the white shirts out there saying, what do you need? What can we do for you? When you think about what we're doing in Iraq and Afghanistan, Sergeant Major and I have traveled several times to both of those countries. Kim, you put him on a plane several times to go to dangerous places. But even here, while he was in the Corps, we went into the combat zone to see our troops, to be able to make sure we were doing the right things, to both build them buildings and support them. But a phenomenal job. And then also when it came to our special programs, the VA program, we're very, very honored to be able to do the VA as well as the wall. So just a kind of a leader who, wherever there's something going on, if it needs a little bit of a push, if it needs a little bit of extra help, Command Sergeant Major Houston was there, and he was always a sounding board, somebody to listen to. And several times I would pull him in my office and I say, Sergeant Major, I'm thinking about going left. What do you think? And he goes, well, sir, that's probably generally right, but maybe we go over here a little bit different and we do some other things. Because when you're a 3-star standing on the stage, you don't necessarily have a lot of people telling you what to do. And so unless you have a trusted advisor, then at some point it's hard to be able to understand. General Milley, about 2 years ago, he said, you have to have 3 people you can trust in your life. Sergeant Major Groninger, he said, you got to have 3 always, okay? And you ought to have probably one of them is your spouse. And so if you really, really screw up, your spouse will say, you missed it. I tell this story about Connie. I love telling this story. So like one night I was at Fort Hood giving a speech. There was 500 people there, and I was for the 36th Engineer Brigade, and I was on a roll. I was out in the middle of the floor, and I'm talking, and I thought it was like the best speech I ever gave. And everybody's clapping, standing up, and all that. And I come walking out that night, and Connie's in the car, and I said, so I was thinking she was going to immediately say like, yeah, great speech. But, and as I went on a little bit further, she finally said something like, yeah, you should have talked more about spouses. You missed it, okay, on that one. So that's what, somewhere out there, you got to have somebody you can trust. Spouse is one. You got to have maybe an aide or an XO, or, maybe your deputy is number 2. But I'm telling you what, you got to have somebody you can trust, and a command sergeant major who's going to look you in the eye and tell you, hey, I think you missed it on this one, sir. Respectful, all the right things. That's what he stands for. And it really does go to this idea of a standard setter. We always learned as lieutenants, the standard you don't enforce is the standard now you have to be willing to accept. It's the new standard. And that's where, when we say world-class organization, we are world-class, not just because we build all over the world. We're world-class because I'd like to say our people are the best in the world, and they're phenomenal. And that's Sergeant Major because you and the attitude and the passion that you have brought to this particular job and the performance you have done to be able to raise an exceptionally great organization to a level that's unbelievable. So look, let's talk about the 2 Saints, okay? Phenomenal job. As much as we're going to hate the Houstons leaving, we brought an amazing team in to be able to take care of them. And I worked with Command Sergeant Major 2 Saint 20 years ago, okay? He was an E6, and we worked together on a couple of projects. He was in my brigade, and I knew back then that he had a great future and great potential. And he's been out. They've been married. His wife, Tanya's here. They've been married for 26 years. Tanya and him have had a lot of different moves. Tanya works for an insurance company. She's a full-time employee for financial services, but also she does an awful lot of work herself to be able to take care of families, family readiness. She stood by Command Sergeant Major the whole time of his career as well, all the different jobs. She's done all the same thing with family readiness. In Pacific Ocean Division, she did a lot with the homeless and even domestic violence survivors. She's an outstanding cook, I understand, and she stood up the cooking club down at Fort Shafter. And even when COVID-19 kicked in, she helped to be able to do some health and some resiliency initiatives to be able to take care of troops back out there. We've introduced their family. We're excited to have them here. And Sergeant Major 2 Saint did a great job at Pacific Ocean Division. This is in the, what we call Indo-PACOM, a lot of other great command sergeant majors, and Pacific Ocean does an awful lot to be able to build in the Pacific. And so he had a great relationship with the other service sergeant majors out there, other countries he was involved in, did a great job with COVID-19 to trying to lean ahead of that, make sure that the people in POD were protected and taken care of, as well as our actions to be able to help America deal with the COVID-19 by building a bunch of supporting hospitals. Unbelievable job on command climate. I was out talking to General Tickner a couple of days ago, and I've been to Hawaii, I think, 6 or 7 times. But it's just a real great team. The team comes together, and that's because Sergeant Major 2 Saint, the attitude that you bring, the ability to talk to people, to bring them together, to find common issues, to deal with challenges. Same thing on the FEV survey. You've been very, very engaged in that. And also civilian recognition. Civilian recognition. Turned on a lot of brand new programs to be able to figure, can we do a better job of recognizing our people? Just an absolute superstar. When I think about how great Houston is, I know that as he walks off the stage here, you are going to continue Monday morning, or if not afternoon, driving on to do phenomenal things. You and your wife are a great addition, and we're glad to have you here. Let's give the Houstons and the 2 Saints a big round of applause, okay? So there's a famous quote. We're having a hard time tracking down who actually wrote it, but I just read this. The rare quality of being an effective leader cannot be attributed to a single trait, a practice, a characteristic, or a golden rule. Effective leadership is a delicate combination of integrity, perseverance, technical knowledge, mission awareness, a sense of fairness, and a genuine concern for one's soldiers. That's what these 2 superstars bring to the table. They bring the experience. They bring unbelievable capability. They bring compassion. They bring the ability to be able to see a problem and to find a solution. But they also bring great candor and the ability to have broad shoulders and to be able to look a senior leader in the eye and give them honest feedback as to how to make the organization better. I talk about world class. You both have done a phenomenal job in your careers. We're going to say goodbye to you this afternoon, but we know Sergeant Major Toussaint, you and your wife are going to continue to propel this great organization to a better place. So I just want to close by saying thanks again to everybody who is watching. Drop both of these families a note, and to all those that put the event on, this amazing, amazing event. And every single day, with the help of our command sergeant majors, we are going to be Army strong and building strong. Thanks an awful lot.
Thank you, sir. Now the 13th Command Sergeant Major, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Sergeant Major Houston.
All right, thanks, sir. So first, to everybody joining us today, both in person and virtually, certainly, I think, Sergeant Major Toussaint will hit it again, but we're both honored and humbled by your presence today. And just as the chief did, right, I don't think we can do this enough given how many moving pieces that we have to do with ceremonies today. I certainly want to thank everybody who played a part in putting the ceremony together. And your behind the scenes work to be able to make events like this happen given our current circumstances. So to Miss Karen Whitby and your assembled team, going the extra mile to always make sure that this command is highlighted in the most professional manner is much appreciated. So thanks to all of you. And I would ask again, let's join them in a round of applause, please. So to the chief and Miss Connie, I don't even know where to begin with my thanks. So, I think simply just thanks for giving me the opportunity to serve as the 13th USACE Command Sergeant Major. And I'll never forget our phone call on the 19th of May of 2017 when you notified me of that selection after 55 days in my previous assignment at JIDO. So quite surprising for many of us, Kim and I, and likely to General Shields and the JIDO team. And you and Connie have been a great team to serve with, and Kim and I have learned so much from both of you. And as we've said over the last couple of days, sometimes command relationships can be difficult, but this experience was anything but that. I'll definitely say more in a few hours at the next ceremony about both of you, but again, just simply thank you. And to my family, Kim and Vince, you know that I don't have the words or the ability to say too much without emotion. So know that I love you, and any success achieved is attributed to you. And thank you both. So since I have another speech to give in just a little over 2 hours, I'll keep my comments short, and I'll try to keep them focused solely on my past 3 years at the Corps of Engineers. So I consider myself a fortunate person to have been able to deploy a platoon, a company, a battalion, and a brigade, the last 3, all during the global war on terrorism. And quite honestly, when I came to USACE, I never thought that anything would compare to deploying America's most precious resources, her sons and daughters. But boy, was I wrong. Until I came to the Corps, I had never had the opportunity to deploy within the continental United States and assist fellow Americans during their time of need. And that all changed very quickly in 2017 with some historic storms named Harvey, Irma, and Maria that occurred shortly after my arrival. And as I attempted to learn just exactly what else USACE did, and more importantly, why, I received an in-depth lesson on what we did in support of FEMA, our nation, and the National Response Framework. The chief and I made 11 different visits to the Viper AOR alone, and I was amazed every single time at the commitment, expertise, and compassion that our folks showed for their fellow Americans. And that it was evidently clear that I was a part of a world-class organization. And ultimately, as the chief mentioned, this lesson played out multiple times over the past 3 years. California wildfires, mudslides, Hurricanes Michael and Florence, and a little thing called a pandemic would all come our way. And in every case, USACE answered the call. And the mere presence of red and white hard hats with a court castle reassured the nation that all would be okay. And you see, I'd been in organizations before that had a high number of DA civilians. And occasionally, I must admit, I found myself disappointed at the level of commitment they displayed for the organizational mission and our nation. I'm proud to report that I never found that person during my time in USACE, and it speaks volumes of their professionalism and unwavering commitment to our nation. And I want to thank all of our leaders, both our military and civilian leaders. I think I've had to make some tough decisions throughout my military career, but as I was able to grasp the USACE mission areas, I realized that some of the decisions that you have made are far more complicated than anything that I've ever come across. But through it all, it was clearly evident your number one priority was the life and safety of the American people. So I want to thank every single USACE employee for the support that you provided me as your CSM. And I've had the privilege to meet many of you during my travels, to include some personnel that didn't even know we had Command Sergeants Major in USACE. But even though you may not have known what I did, you took the time to explain your role in this organization. And for that, I am thankful for the time that you spent educating me. And I hope that you feel that your investment into me was worthwhile. And lastly, I want to welcome Command Sergeant Major Toussaint and Tanya to USACE. Although, as the chief mentioned, right, you're no strangers coming to us from POD, I know that he too will continue to learn from our fabulous team here in this headquarters and across our enterprise. So, Sergeant Major, know that this is a great organization that does amazing things for our country. Things that no one else wants to do or could do. So continue to focus on people, communication, and let those technical experts drive those processes that make day-to-day ops successful. And I hope sincerely that your experiences here are as amazing as Kim and I's have been. Thank you, SEONs, Building Strong. I'm taking it.
Thank you. Our 14th Command Sergeant Major, Sergeant Major Toussaint.
All right, good morning, distinguished guests, families, friends of U.S. Army Corps of Engineers joining us today, both virtually and here in person. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's ceremony. First and foremost, I'd like to thank God for this incredible blessing, as it's through him all things are made possible. Chaplain, thanks for those incredible words and those blessings requested for today. General Semonite, I just want to thank you, sir, personally for selecting me and allowing me and my family the opportunity to continue to serve this amazing organization, our nation, and the Army. I do not take this selection lightly. You have my unwavering commitment to do my best each and every day to demonstrate the importance and value of the office of the Command Sergeant Major. As I pondered what my remarks would be today, I was reminded that it's truly not about me, but instead about the individuals and organizations that took chances and invested in me, and in some cases selflessly put me before themselves. There are so many to whom I owe this day, and truly this honor. I will begin by generalizing my thanks. So to all of the officers, commissioned and warrant, non-commissioned officers and soldiers, civilian leaders, and employees who I have served with in the past. Thank you for your leadership and support. You allowed me to make mistakes and learn and grow from those mistakes. You praised and held me accountable as appropriate. You were tough, but you were fair. You tested me every day. You did the heavy lifting. And all these experiences, good, bad, or indifferent, helped in my development as a leader. So thank you very much. I'll be remiss if I did not thank this individual personally. Command Sergeant Major Ward, I can sincerely say that you have been the most influential leader in my career. Your passion for, commitment to taking care of people, families, and the institution, your willingness to teach and share knowledge and experience, and most importantly, demonstrating what right looks like, have been invaluable. Thank you for believing in me, for mentorship, and for always taking my phone calls. I really do appreciate it. To Command Sergeant Major Houston and family, first and foremost, thank you for your commitment, your professionalism and leadership, and for your many sacrifices over the past 31 years. You have definitely made a lasting impact on the regiment and on the Corps of Engineers. And on behalf of Tanya and I, a big thanks to you and Kim for spending the time ensuring our transition was as smooth as possible. We wish you the very best in retirement. To the headquarters team, you welcomed me, made me feel at home from day one. And a big thank you to those behind the scenes who made this ceremony possible. To the men and women of USACE and the regiment, I am excited to join the team and look forward to working for you. Lastly, my family, my mom Evelyn watching virtually, wife Tanya, daughter Cheyenne virtually, and granddaughter Amaya sitting here with us today. None of this would be possible without your support, encouragement, and pushing me to go to the limits. And babe, I know that it has not been easy keeping things together while managing your own careers, whether it was as a soldier for 20 years or a civilian. But you did it. There simply aren't words enough that I can say to thank you. So all the gratitude and all this great stuff goes to you, and I love you guys dearly. Today, I assume the duties as the 14th Command Sergeant Major of USACE. I understand the responsibilities and expectations that come with this office, and I promise to give 110% every day. I have learned over the years, when appointed to an office, that office does not belong to you, but rather to the people. And therefore, my job is to serve you. I will always make myself available. I will be fair and impartial. I will always be honest. I will enforce standards and discipline. And most importantly, ensure that all are treated with dignity and respect. Chief, I understand your intent and your vision. I will do my best to protect the foundation of the castle. I will operate in your blind spots and provide the data and information you need to make informed decisions. We will continue to revolutionize systems and processes that at every echelon, whether military or civilian, to continue to be a world-class organization that delivers. But we cannot achieve any of this without people. Therefore, they must be our number one priority and in all that we do. I accept this challenge. I am ready. It's going to be great. I'm ready to have some fun, so let's begin. Again, thank all for attending, and may God continue to bless each and every one of you. People first, Essayons, building strong, Army strong. Thank you.
We're privileged to have witnessed the change of responsibility for the United States Army Corps of Engineers. Command Sergeant Major Toussaint will carry on the great tradition of Command Sergeant Majors before him. Please join me in showing our appreciation to these outstanding leaders. At this time, please rise for the conclusion of today's ceremony with the playing of the Engineer and Army songs. We do ask that you refrain from singing in recognition of the COVID protocol. This will be followed by a welcome ceremony for Sergeant Major Toussaint and his wife Tanya, located on the third floor in room 3M 6070.
In the castle of my father, I got my training for the team. You can call me an Indian soldier, the Holy Spirit has been my dream. S.A.O. and the authorities, we will bear our red and our white. S.A.O. this is America, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. S.A.O. S.A.O. March along, sing a song with the army of the free. Count the brave, count the true, who have fought to victory. We're the army and proud of our name. We're the army and proudly proclaim. First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along. And it's high, high day, the army's on its way. Count off the pages loud and strong. For wherever we go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along.
Ladies and gentlemen, we ask that you remain standing while we allow our official party to depart. We would like to also remind you that Sergeant Major Houston's retirement ceremony will occur this afternoon at 1300